Before we get started, let me remind you that my accent is located on one extreme of the continuum that goes from utterly incomprehensible to high-level native. I also have a lisp, and I'm coming out of a really bad cold, for which I entirely blame my toddler sons. So let me wish you best of luck in understanding my words, particularly because it's a long speech, about 3.5 pages, 12 minutes, so hang in there. On this note, welcome to the opening of the World OutGames Miami Global Conference on Human Rights. I'm delighted and honored to be here with you tonight representing the United Nations Human Rights Office and its LGBTI campaign, Free and Equal. It is a real pleasure to welcome activists, researchers, scholars, and athletes here in Miami for such an important conference. I want to thank you for joining the discussion on one of the remaining human rights challenges of our time. The OutGame has a great objective of showing the world that regardless of one's sexual orientation or gender identity, there's something that all of us are good at. We can all excel when given the opportunity. We also share a common human spirit, an appetite for freedom, dignity, belonging, and opportunities. Unfortunately, for most LGBTI people today, these remain elusive goals. It has been the case for centuries, and we must always remember the plight of those who came before us, particularly because to this day, their history remains invisible. But today we are witnessing a proliferation of hate speech and human rights abuses, a trend that the newly appointed independent expert on sexual orientation and gender identity at the United Nations, Vitit Muntar-Born, who will join us for the closing of this conference on Sunday, described as a vortex of violence and discrimination. This week only, we had to witness 141 men being arrested and 2 others canned just for being who they are in Indonesia. This backsliding on human rights is not specific to LGBTI people, but LGBTI people do experience it disproportionately. One explanation is that the steady advances that we have witnessed over the past decades in most parts of the globe have led to resistance to further change. As the light gathers, so does the darkness. It is not really a backlash, more a sign of progress. As we meet success in the struggle for respect of human rights of LGBTI people, progress becomes harder to win, and we become targets of vengeance by those who feel defeated. Nothing illustrates better this vengeance than the attacks against gay and bisexual men in Chechnya in recent months. The extent of what happened there is terrifying and reminiscent of darker times in history. The world has not witnessed such organized violence against gay and bisexual men since Nazi Germany, which too encouraged the extermination of homosexual population. Abuses are allegedly not only being committed by armed forces, but also by family members as well. Imagine that, the own victim's family member, the so-called honor killings that we have also observed in other parts of the globe, such as Syria and Iraq. It is hard to face so much hate and cruelty. Sadly, we must also remember that this is only the tip of the iceberg of global LGBTI suffering. LGBTI suffering is all around us, everywhere, every day. But most of the time we will not, or we cannot see it. Tonight, there are millions of gay, lesbian, bi, and trans youth lying awake in their bed, fearing that they will never have a chance at a good life. They are constantly told and often believe they are no good. They are bombarded with negative messages about who they are from their family, their school, and their community. They are bullied at school by their peers, but they are also bullied on national television by political leaders who want to decide whether they should be allowed to use the bathroom corresponding to the gender with which they identify. Bathroom bills have this particularity that they are never about bathroom. They are always about shaming. As a result of these negative messages, LGBTI people experience silencing, loneliness, shame, feeling dirty, and ultimately family disappointment, with very little hope for support. They are not only at risk for suicide, but also for depression, substance abuse, and abuse. Some of the harm inflicted to them is irreparable. They will carry the scars with them for the rest of their lives. The suffering caused by homophobia, biphobia, and transphobia is not limited to LGBTI people. Their families suffer too. To this day, most people who have same-sex attraction in the world still get married, with dire consequences: unhappy marriages, lying, adultery, emotional harm, domestic violence, and trauma to children. Parents of LGBTI people also suffer in their struggle to accept their children. And children of LGBTI people continue to be stigmatized around the world and told that they would do better with a mother and a father. The few statistics available to us on LGBTI vulnerability as a result of this stigmatization and discrimination are staggering. More than half of LGBT youth experience bullying, leading 1 in 3 to skip or drop out of high school. Suicidal thoughts are almost 10 times more likely among trans youth and 4 times more likely among gay and lesbian youth. I know this feeling. I once was this child and teenager. In my bed, I prayed the gay away. I lied to my parents, my teachers, my priest, and my friends. And my first crushes, instead of being exhilarating moments, were tinted of shame and secrecy. Eventually, I left far from home and came out in the United States at 23 years old. I feel I spent the remainder of my 20s recovering self-esteem and rebuilding a community for myself. I'm conscious that I could only overcome society's stigma and prejudice because of the privilege of my nationality, my birthplace, my color, and my education. The burden of homophobia and transphobia is heavier on the most marginalized and the poor everywhere. They often have no voice, no agency, and no participation in decision-making. They suffer from multiple human rights abuses. For poor and marginalized people, living or coming out is not an option. They have to stay and endure discrimination and violence. A year ago, I met a gay man in the slums of Mumbai who told me that once he was outed, he had no choice but to remain in the family dwelling, exposed daily to the homophobia of his family and his neighbors. Leaving meant losing the only livelihood that was available to him, and risking dying homeless in the streets of Mumbai. This widening gap between the experience of the most privileged LGBTI people in urban areas in more tolerant countries and the suffering of marginalized LGBTI people in less tolerant places is creating an urgency for change. In hostile environments, LGBTI people often want nothing more than to live. They know they are being robbed of their life and their freedom by prejudice and bigotry. They know that there are places out there where they can take their right place in the humanity they belong to. Although it is impossible to track, there is evidence that LGBTI migration is accelerating. In many places, centers for LGBTI asylum seekers and refugees are reporting a tremendous increase in demand. LGBTI people have always left rural areas and small cities for larger urban areas. But increasingly, they are attempting to migrate from the least tolerant countries to better places. Yet, extracting every single LGBTI people from hostile environments is not feasible, and it's not a solution. So what do we need? What we need is global social change. That means not only achieving legal changes, but also fostering a true revolution in hearts and minds globally. We must work together to design ways to achieve progress, faster progress. Our success in the coming years will lie in organization, in careful long-term planning, in consistency of action over the years, and in the scale of the financing. It will also lie in using all the tools at our disposal, as the recipe for social change is complex. As an example, in the United States here, nobody can pinpoint what triggered the historical shift in public attitudes we observed. Was it the HIV epidemic? Will and Grace? Ellen DeGeneres? The marriage equality movement? People coming out in the workplace? The lesson is that we must design innovative and comprehensive strategies. This should include empowering and funding local LGBTI groups, having a dialogue with faith-based leaders, pushing legal changes through the court system and international law, encouraging a more positive representation of LGBTI people in the media, reminding companies of their human rights responsibilities towards LGBTI employees, carrying out public campaigns to challenge stereotypes against LGBTI people, funding research to better understand the experience of LGBTI people, building coalition with other human rights movements, and creating concrete escape routes for LGBTI people whose lives are in immediate danger. I'm proud that our office is contributing to change through our Free and Equal campaign, which challenges negative stereotypes and promotes equal and fair treatment of LGBTI people. Since its launch in July 2013, UN Free and Equal has become one of the United Nations' most successful and popular global campaigns. It reached well over 1 billion people worldwide. Just last week, on the occasion of the International Day Against Homophobia and Transphobia, we launched a video mini-campaign called Culture of Love, which made the point that the LGBTI people have their place in tradition and family. To conclude, I would say that the resilience and creativity of LGBTI people is a silver lining to their suffering. The immense knowledge we have accumulated through centuries of persecution have provided us with courage and creativity. I constantly observe how LGBTI people excel in turning their personal hardship into the precursor to beauty and triumph. The power to change the history of LGBTI people is within our grasp. We do not have to wait another century. The next 3 days of discussion will create a unique opportunity to think our way forward and tap into our passion, momentum, and capability to excel. Together as activists, athletes, and allies, we can devise new ways to achieve change. Again, a warm welcome on behalf of the Human Rights Office of the United Nations. Thank you for being here, and thank you for your service to our community.